Deep in north-central New Mexico is the sleepy little town of Dulce. Dulce is located on the Archuleta Mesa on the Colorado-New Mexico border. It is home to about 3,000 residents, and it is the capital of the Jicarilla Apache Nation. For as small and as insignificant as this remote location may sound, it became the center of controversy in the early 1980s. Physicist and inventor Bennewitz claimed that he had discovered an underground base occupied by reptilian extraterrestrials near Dulce. His story quickly spread through the UFO community. Allegations that surround the base include human abductions, alien abductions, by these extraterrestrial beings. He also asserted that the lizard people, Reptilians, were engaged in the development of advanced technology including genetic manipulation. Their plan, according to conspiracy, is to control the government and gain ultimate control of the Earth by means of a new world order. Stories have emerged regarding an untoward alliance between humans and the inhabitants of the Dulce base, which include ties to shadow governments via secret societies such as the Illuminati, the Masons, the Bilderberg Group, the Skull and Bones. Dulce is not the only place on Earth where it is believed underground bases exist, but it is the one which has received the greatest notoriety in recent times. Subterranean bases, according to conspiracy theorists, can be found all around the world with major active outposts all across the United States, Australia, Antarctica, South America. These underground bases are connected to each other via a series of channels which connect one base to another. There are even assertions that one of these tunnels leads to an active base beneath the Vatican, which has been exerting control over Western civilization for centuries. What does mythology say about reptilians and underground bases? A wealth of information regarding this subject has recently surfaced that seemingly reaches across vast extremes. As strange as all of this may sound, could any of what they say be true? We turn to mythology in the search for answers. It must be stated before we move on that mythology, like many of the claims that come from the UFO community, is treated more like science fiction rather than fact. Traditional mythologists contend that the gods we find in myth represent the forces of nature or the creation of someone's vivid imagination. With that said, does mythology support these seemingly outlandish claims? Stories of underground realms occupied by the gods pervade mythology. Depending on the culture, it has been called Hades, Tartarus, Xibalba, Duat, Potala, Hell. These homes of the gods are not always found deep within the earth, but are sometimes described as being within a mountain or deep beneath the waters of the earth. Access to their domain, regardless of locality, is often described as located through the mouth of a cave. The entrance may appear open at one time, then disappear from view completely and instantaneously. The inhabitants of these underground realms did not desire to be visited by unwanted nor unexpected company. Yet, access was granted to select individuals. According to ancient texts, entrance into the underworld was anything but easy. The Mayan Popol Vuh, for example, describes the route taken by the hero brothers Hun-Hun-Afu and Vu-Cub-Hunapu. It tells of a steep descent into the home of the lords of Zabala and the many challenges they had to face. Similarly, texts such as the Egyptian Book of the Dead describe the path by which the deceased god king must travel to enter Duat. Like the Popol Vuh, the path is fraught with challenges the individual must pass in order to enter the realm of the dead, the underworld. The Vishnu Purana states that the deepest level of the underworld, Potala, can be found 70,000 yohanas beneath the surface of the earth. Gilgamesh, in the epic bearing his name, is described as traveling 12 leagues in the dense darkness until he arrives in the light-filled chamber of the underworld. Mythological descriptions of underground bases. The underground domains of the gods are described as filled with houses or vast halls where thousands of individuals could assemble. Fountains, plants, tall grasses, trees, and animals of all kinds filled this land. The divine ascetics, Narada, who was featured in the Vishnu Purana, claims to have visited Potala. Potala was much more charming than heaven, he exclaimed. What can be compared with Potala where Nagas, Serpents are adorned with beautiful and brilliant and pleasure-diffusing gems. This region is embellished with the daughters of Deities and Danavis. Similar descriptions of the underground, underwater homes of the gods are scattered through mythology. The home of the Sumerian fertility god Enki, which is located in the watery deep, is described as having his house built of gold, silver, and lapis lazuli. Even writers, such as Greek philosopher Plato, echo this notion. He believed that the earth was littered with a number of hollows that were full of water, air, trees, fruits, and flowers. Stories of underground bases in history. Surprisingly, Plato confirms yet another claim made by modern UFOlogy. Plato goes on to state that these hollows were connected to one another by subterranean channels, but Plato isn't the only one who refers to tunnels that lie beneath the surface of the earth. Inca legends tell of vast networks of tunnels that crisscross the length and the breadth of the planet, complete with underground cities. When Pizarro and the Spanish conquistadors entered Peru, they kidnapped the Inca emperor, Atahualpa, and held him for ransom. They demanded enough gold to fill a room in return for Atahualpa's release. Pizarro's men heard rumors that the Inca gold was being held in a vast network of subterranean tunnels. The tunnels were thousands of years old and ran for miles beneath the Inca capital. In more recent years, adventurers who have hazarded into the caverns beneath Cusco entered but were never seen again. One man actually did make it out of the tunnels alive, and he had brought with him 2 bars of gold. According to officials, he had gone mad. The entrance to the tunnels were then walled up for safety's sake. At least that is the official story. The Apache Indians report that their ancestors took refuge in ancient tunnels during a cataclysmic disaster on the earth. They wandered these immense passageways for years, carrying the seeds for life in the New World. Underground bases and genetic engineering. But what about the other claim made by UFOologists regarding these bases being used for genetic engineering? According to their assertion, it is at the lowest level, the 7th level, of the Dulce base that the extraterrestrial reptilians are engaging in this kind of experimentation. Again, mythology supports this premise. Native American tribes across the country are the most vocal when it comes to this topic. The Jicarilla Apache, whose headquarters is in Dulce, the Navajo, and the Hopi Indians have long-standing traditions of man's creation and emergence from beneath the surface of the earth. The Algonquians recount, "Thus did the lowermost world cave become overfilled with living things, full of unfinished creatures, crawling like reptiles over one another in dark blackness. In this matter they do not stand alone. Berossus, a Babylonian priest, tells of the hideous creatures that inhabit this underground realm. He describes men who had one body but 2 heads, some with the legs and horns of a goat, and even some with the hindquarters of a horse and the body of a man. In short, there were creatures in which were combined the limbs of every species of animal. These genetic experiments are, according to reports from UFO advocates, being conducted by a group of reptilian beings in the lowest level of the base. Thomas Costello, a former senior security officer at the base, testified that the base at Dulce is a 7-level underground facility, with the lower levels described as a series of natural caverns. It was believed by Costello that these caverns were used by different extraterrestrial races in our remote past. In Hindu cosmology, the Naga, serpents, once lived on Earth, but the great god Brahma sent them to live under the sea in the 7th level of their underground realm called Potala. In the Sumerian Inanna's descent to the netherworld, Inanna was required to pass through 7 gates to finally reach the bowels of the underworld. Aztec legend says that Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, went to Mictlan, the Aztec underworld, and created mankind using his own blood and the bones of the previous race. Throughout mythology, the act of creating humanity is always associated with a specific group of gods, the fertility gods. Fertility gods around the world are traditionally depicted as reptilian or amphibious in nature, and appear in art as a blend between a man and a fish, or a man and a snake. The reptilian agenda. A number of individuals also argue the reptilians' true agenda is to control us, with the objective to dominate the planet. They cite the development of a new world order. Proponents of this theory believe that the reptilians, or the byproduct of their genetic manipulation experiments, intend to take control of the Earth's surface. This takeover is being orchestrated by an extremely powerful and influential group, which includes many of the world's wealthiest people. Some claim members of this elite group are actually genetically related to each other. Their goal was to have every man, woman, and child on Earth obedient to their covert agenda. The Reptilians are also accused of wanting to reduce the population on Earth and are employing weapons as such. Chemtrails, GMOs, vaccinations, man-made viruses, to reduce our numbers. It is contended that it is easier to control 500,000 or 1,000,000 individuals than it is the 7 billion who currently live on Earth. A look into mythology relative to this claim does have a few pillars of support. The idea of culling the human population on Earth is not a modern concept. In the Sumerian epic of Atrahasis, we find a story where the gods do just that. 1,200 years after the creation of mankind, the number of people who inhabited the Earth grew. Their noise disturbed the sky god Enlil's sleep. Enlil decided to send a plague in order to reduce the population. This worked for a while, but when another 1,200 years passed, the population had grown again, and Enlil was once more bothered by the noise. This time, in order to decrease their numbers, he gets the thundering god Adad to hold back the rains, and the world suffered from a great drought where vast numbers died. The population continues to grow, and by the time another 1,200 years pass, the noise became too much for Enlil to bear. Wanting to alleviate his problem, he tells the gods to hold back all of nature's gifts. This went on for 6 years, and as the text describes, the people of Earth were reduced to cannibalism in order to survive. The fertility god, Enki, tried to save the people from starvation. This angered Enlil even more. Finally, Enlil, in an act of vengeance, decided to destroy mankind once and for all. He planned to do this by flooding the world. Enki once again stepped in and saved humanity from total annihilation. He warned Atrahasis of his impending flood and told him to build a boat to save himself and his family. Myth, reptilians, and underground bases? Torrents of theories have come forward as we seek the truth regarding our place in the universe. Mythology does lend itself to support a number of these claims. It is difficult to determine if the creators of these theories base their conjecture using myth as their foundation, first-hand experience, or something else. What does seem evident is that much of the information UFO researchers are bringing to light does parallel the myths and legends that have passed to us from antiquity, bringing this idea full circle. If the stories being unearthed in the UFO community were not based on mythological sources, yet mythology supports these claims, then the stories of our distant past may have a basis in fact. It implies that the gods were living, breathing beings who walked the earth in our remote past, created man, and played an essential role in the development of life and culture on the planet.